So Carmen and I are both freezing cold in northern New Jersey, where it's a balmy 25 today. I think Cindy may be coming back on. Yes, thank goodness. Um, that's good news for me. But her first question to me was to talk a little bit about my practice and why I became an IEC. I have a general college consulting practice. I actually like to work with kids who are applying to relatively selective colleges because I feel that I know those colleges the best, although I know that's not a practice area that everybody loves. And what happened when my youngest child went off to college, I was actually approached by the college that I went to where I had done years and years of alumni interviewing, and I was asked if I was interested in working for them on a part-time basis. And I was, and I loved doing that. And I did that for a little over 2 years. And then a whole host of strange things happened in that admissions office. But ultimately, I decided to leave, not knowing that literally the varsity blues scandal was going to break within a few weeks. There was then going to be a pandemic within a few months. It was kind of crazy, but that was how I started my IEC practice. And I now work with I have a small group of kids, 15 per grade year. And I also help with I actually run a small nonprofit. I didn't found it, but I run it called Ed Prep Scholars that works with students in northern New Jersey who would not otherwise be able to get private counseling. So that's my favorite thing. And then it's kind of funny that I got interested in AI in 2023 when it first launched. I'm not a techie person at all. I can barely make my Google Drive work properly, to be honest. And as you can see from when we had the little tech glitch, that was a little bit unnerving to me as well. But there was something about AI that caught my attention, and I started using it in my personal life. And then I saw all of the things that it could do. And, over the last year plus, it has only gotten better. And I continue to use it on a regular basis. So whether it's looking up what's the quickest way to get to a location, or how to map out a college visit route that I want to take, or how to answer emails when I need to be nicer or less nice, whatever it may be, I just use it all of the time in my personal life and in my work life. And I approach it as a tool. I don't think it replaces my judgment or my critical thinking. I think that it can help me think more expansively and differently about different issues in college consulting. And I think that it's just practice and feeling comfortable with it. It's not going away. So I've taken it upon myself to learn as much as I can about it. When I was at NACAC this past September, I went to every AI session there was, even the ones on enrollment management that were never going to involve me, but I really just wanted to see as much as I possibly could. In every single breakout, there was an AI option, sometimes more than one. So that's how I've been approaching it.
That sounds great, Kate. And I think your story is really instructive because it shows you don't have to be techie in order to be interested in technology or the use of technology in our practice and in our work with students. And so that's why I was so thrilled when to hear your story and your background and your experience with it. So that makes a big difference. And we're going to really enjoy having you share a little bit about what you've learned and how AI technology works. So, but before we do that, what are some of the challenges that you've discovered as you've used AI? And then I'm going to pull up the video, or you can just share your screen and show us how to go through the settings, because the confidentiality, and that's part of one of the big issues that everybody's still dealing with is what is the ethics and standards and confidentiality, and we don't know what's going out into the wide world web. So let's have you.
I think one thing is that we're always using AI all the time, even if we don't think we are. So that's the first thing. So people who say, I don't use AI, well, you are. And it's not, you may not be using Grammarly, but if you are using just Google to do a search, you're using AI. So I think that's number one, that it's just integrated into what we are doing all the time. Obviously, the earlier challenges we're getting inaccurate information, and you have to be mindful of that. But just the same way that I think if you see a news source, you want to make sure it's a credible news source, and you want to do your own vetting and make sure that it makes sense. I think that that's true for the AI, and it has certainly gotten more reliable over the last year and a half. The other thing is that you have to get good at using it. So if you are using ChatGPT or Perplexity, which I use as well, or Claude, which I use also, but not as frequently, and you're using it like you would Google, that's not going to work. It's a different kind of question. It's a different kind of approach. So just the same way that writing an analytical essay is different than writing a personal statement, and you have to approach it differently, you have to learn how to approach the tools and use them. But they're never going to be a substitute for your judgment and your thinking. They're going to be part of your judgment and your thinking. In terms of using it in my direct work with my students, there are certain things that I do, which I think we'll get to, something with college visits that I just provide to the families. And I tell them that this is generated from ChatGPT, and I get, the kids take it for granted and the parents are like, oh, wow, that's amazing. But that's just the difference between being a kid and an adult. But if I am going to do anything with student work products, so for that, I would mean their resume or their activities list descriptions or anything related to essays, the personal statement, or the supplement, I am completely transparent with families. The first thing I do is get written permission, and I explain why I want to use the AI tool. And one of the things that I've explained, and of course, I just got that new article that everybody or a lot of people saw earlier this week about, UNC using AI. I explained that colleges are using AI. We don't know all the ways that they're using AI, but we have some guesses. And if they're using AI as part of their admissions review, I want to know what they're seeing. So that's what I explain to families. That is why I believe the tools that I want to use are useful and important to do. The other thing that I explain, and this is what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to hopefully share my screen. Can you see my screen up here? Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing your screen.
So I learned this from my colleague and friend who is so much better at this than I am, Michelle Avard, who said, if you don't pay for the product, you are the product. And so I pay for ChatGPT, and I also make sure that my settings, which you can come to up here by your name, over here, you go to data controls, and you can see that I have turned off improve the model for everyone. I don't know if you can do that on the free version of ChatGPT, but I know you can do that on the paid version. So I have this set to off all the time. I realize that this may not be the most pro-social purpose here because I'm not, allowing what I put in to train, but I'm afraid that if I toggle this on and off, so kept it on, let's say, when it was just my own personal stuff, I would forget. So in an abundance of caution, this is always off. So this is the first safeguard that I use to make sure that nothing about my students could ever get used by OpenAI. The other thing is that if I'm doing work products, so I'm using something that a student has produced, I come down here and I toggle to temporary, which you can see here. They say that this chat won't appear in history or be used to train the models. Now so anytime if I'm putting in a resume or activities descriptions or an essay, I'm on temporary. I've also completely redacted any identifying information from that document. So if it's a resume, it doesn't have the student's name, it doesn't have their address, it doesn't have even their high school name. Anything that would, allow it to come back to a specific kid. Now, obviously, when you take out a high school name, you are reducing some information that could be relevant and that a college would obviously know. I'm willing to take that risk. It gives me lots of very valuable information. The downside of temporary is that it doesn't create a history of what you're doing, and it doesn't remember what you're doing. So every time you're using ChatGPT, you have to, on temporary, you have to remind it with your prompts who you are, what you're doing, and you have to copy it to a Google Doc or a Word doc so that you have it for the future. Whereas my, email responder or, for social media, those kinds of things, I don't have to remind it each time. It's there embedded in the memory. On the temporary, it's not. But that is, an inconvenience that's certainly worth, in my opinion, the confidentiality and those safeguards. So that's how I handle the transparency. That's how I handle protecting student data.
I think that's a great idea. And so, we always try to err on the side of being overly cautious so that we're not being not enough cautious. And also letting people know, as you ask for permission from the parents, letting them know that you're going to do this. That is one of the, our students are technology natives, they're digital natives. And so embracing that, as you said, they get excited about it. There's a Pew research that was done several years ago that looks at how we as adults look at technology and how youth and Gen Z looks at technology, and they treat it like Play-Doh. What can I push? We worry about breaking it. If I hit the wrong button, something's going to happen, just like today. Just the minute we went on, all my internet went down. That's what we worry about. But they are like, push here, what happens? Push here, what happens? So, AI is the brand new thing, and that's really exciting. So,
when I said something to a mom once, I said, she was about going on a college trip. And I said, well, I would ask ChatGPT, and I told her how I would do it. And the response I got back to her was, I would never have thought to do that. Where has this been all my life? Your child would have told you to do that and would have known just what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm now going to demonstrate a way in which you can use ChatGPT to assess fit and help students strengthen their resume and/or their activity list descriptions. This is a prompt that I adapted from Maria Caligera, who is a school counselor at the St. Catherine's British School in Athens, Greece. In this particular prompt, I was doing two things. I was comparing Yale and Princeton for student number 1 and student number 2. And then I was comparing student number 1 and student number 2 to see which school they were a better fit for. So whether student number 1 or 2 was a better fit for Yale, whether student number 1 or 2 was a better fit for Princeton. And at the end of this demonstration, I will explain why I did this and what ChatGPT revealed. And it was interesting. So the first prompt is, I am a college consultant. I want to help students assess whether their profile is a fit for Yale University and Princeton University and what they can do to enhance their fit. Please summarize the admissions requirements and expectations for undergraduate applicants at Yale University and Princeton University. Include details on academic standards, personal qualities, leadership, extracurricular involvement, and any specific preferences or focus areas unique to each institution. And in a matter of 10 seconds, ChatGPT will generate this summary of admissions requirements and expectations for the two universities. Each time that I put this prompt into ChatGPT, it might yield slightly different language, but overall it's going to look exactly the same. It's going to go through the different areas that I asked it to go through, and it's going to do it for the two schools. And then it gives you a sort of generic step for a generic student to enhance fit. This is not particularly interesting to me, but I do think that this first part can be useful to share with students. Of course, I would not copy and paste it without reviewing it and making sure that it was consistent with my understanding of the schools, but it's an excellent, excellent starting point. I like to have a 1 or 2 sentence summary. So my second prompt is always, please provide a 1 or 2 sentence summary for each school, which it does. And now I tell it that I want to give it a resume for a student. I ask the ChatGPT to read the resume but not comment, and I make sure it understands that. If I were to just upload a resume, it would probably start revising the resume, and that is not what I'm interested in. So it tells me, yes, I understand. Please provide the resume, and I will read it without commenting. So I put in the resume. It gets read instantaneously, and it tells me that it has read the resume and will await my instructions. So my first question is, how does the resume align with Yale's academic and extracurricular expectations? And it goes through the same categories that it summarized, and it tells me how the student fits with all of those different characteristics or preferences and institutional priorities that are at Yale. And then I get some potential enhancements for fit, which are not that specific, but more than the generic ones. And then I ask it to do the same analysis for Princeton, and it does the same analysis for Princeton, academics, extracurriculars, and the potential enhancements for fit. So here, I'm now asking it if this resume aligns better with Yale's emphasis on intellectually curious students with top academic performance, authentic character, and a commitment to leadership and service. I go on to say that the university values interdisciplinary passions, cultural awareness, and contributions to its collaborative and diverse communities. Or does it align better with Princeton's preference for academically outstanding students with originality, integrity, and a service-oriented mindset? And I go on to say that it emphasizes strong writing skills, sustained leadership, and a deep commitment to intellectual and personal growth. And having read the resume, ChatGPT says that it aligns with both of the school's values, not surprising because they're not that different, but it might lean slightly more toward Yale's preferences for the following reasons. And it gives very specific reasons from the resume about where there's strong alignment for both schools. Princeton is here, but then gives a conclusion for why Yale may be a slightly better match. So if I'm going to use this in my work with students, I'm going to obviously pay attention to what it's saying. I'm going to make my own assessment of whether or not it's accurate and share what I feel is appropriate to share with the student, but always, always, always not just cutting and pasting and telling the student this is what you need to do because ChatGPT says it, but using it as a starting point for me to think critically about the resume and about the fit. And here I then ask it for any skills or achievements that don't feel strong enough. And in this case, it was for Princeton. Could you please suggest enhancements to the existing entries or propose new entries that showcase relevant skills or experiences? And I ask ChatGPT to revise the resume to align with the admissions expectations of Princeton and emphasizing the qualities that, that ChatGPT has identified, and I agree, are relevant: leadership, community service, or community impact, and STEM achievements. And it then offers some very, very specific ways to enhance the resume. This would apply equally to the activities descriptions in the Common App. And it's, again, not something that I would necessarily show a student, but it is a great way for me to start thinking about suggestions to enhance their fit, particularly if they decide that Princeton is their first choice. So it's going through all of these different areas. And I will say that when the student and I reviewed them, we agreed that they were actually strong suggestions to improve the resume. So now I have this for student number one, and I could end here if that's the only purpose of what I was trying to figure out. And I would have a lot of help in guiding the student. But I wanted to do something different here or additional. I said, thank you. And now I want to show a different resume. Please read it and tell me when you are done. Do you understand? It says, yes, please upload the resume. I upload it. It asks me for my next steps or instructions. And I ask it the same question that I asked about student number one, whether this resume aligns better with Yale or Princeton. And it tells me that it aligns well with both, but at the end of the day, it goes through all of its different aspects of the resume. At the end of the day, and it goes through the Yale, it thinks that Princeton may be a better fit. Okay, so then I ask it, when reading both resumes in conjunction, which student do you think is a better fit for Yale? And it tells me that both students are strong, but student number one appears to be a better overall fit for Yale, and it tells me why it thinks that. So the interdisciplinary passions, the commitment to leadership and service, the global perspective, and it compares it with student number two, and it tells me that it thinks that student number one is a stronger fit for Yale, and student number two may be a better match for Princeton. I then ask it to do the same analysis for Princeton because I want to check for consistency, because if it said student number one is a better fit for Princeton, then I know that the model is not working properly. But fortunately, it didn't, go off on a wild tangent here, and it gave me a reason why it feels that student two aligns more closely with Princeton, and it gives all of the different things about originality, intellectual curiosity, writing skills, just the various different ways in which it feels student number two is a stronger fit for Princeton. And it compares it with student number one, which I had asked it to do, and tells me, I then want to get a comparison chart because I think that they're interesting and helpful for me. So for student two, can you please compare what the student should do to enhance their fit for Yale and Princeton based on their current resume? And it gives some suggestions. And it also creates this fantastic chart that I found very helpful and the student found helpful. And it then gives us a summary. So when I first ran this model, I was a little skeptical. I read what Maria had written, and she had talked about a student, and I think that student was looking at maybe Harvard and MIT. So there were some stronger differences. MIT is clearly more, they're similar to Harvard in many respects, but there's greater differences between Harvard and MIT than between Yale and Princeton. But I was in this situation where student number one and student number two are real students. They go to the same, where they went to the same high school. Student number one was first in the class. Student number two was fourth in the class. It had to do maybe with one more dual enrollment or AP class. They were virtually identical. Academically, student number one had a 36 ACT and student number two had a 34 ACT, but they were very, very, very different extracurricularly. They were both extremely accomplished outside of the classroom, but student number one, it was more in leadership and advocacy, and student number two was more in academic and quiet pursuits, doing some archaeology research and actually written a novel, but was more solitary and less of a sort of extroverted leader and advocate. So they both decided to apply REA to Yale. And of course, I couldn't say to either one of them, well, your classmate is also applying. And I really thought, I've never worked in the Yale admissions office, but based on my admissions experience, based on the fact that student number two had a more unusual major, and I thought intellectually sort of rigorous non-academic life, I thought that student number two was going to get into Yale restricted early action, and that student number one was going to be probably deferred, and ultimately I had no idea. I was wrong. Student number one got into Yale, early action, just like ChatGPT said. And student number two was actually denied outright and is now in her first year at Princeton. Obviously, it's not because ChatGPT said that. I'll never know all of the reasons why each kid is where they are. I think they landed where they should, but I thought it was fascinating. And after seeing that happen, I was just more convinced that the model, or the ChatGPT model, was going to add some insight. It's obviously not dispositive. I'm not suggesting it's going to predict where a student is going to get in, but I think it adds some valuable insight. So I haven't had a chance to test it for the class of 2025 because I don't know where everybody's going to college yet, but I now use this. Usually not to compare student number one and student number two, but for a student to help them think about their different choices. So comparing college one, college two, college three for a specific student. But if you were presented with a situation like I had, where you had two very similar kids from the same high school, you can also do a college comparison for students. So that is tool number one, using AI to assess fit and help students strengthen applications. Saying this is perfect, it doesn't replace judgment, it doesn't replace anything. It's just additional information. And I would never say to a kid, you should apply to one school versus the other because ChatGPT says you're a better fit. But I was shocked with its accuracy. And again, I'm going to do this, have a better sense this year because they were the only kids where I did it last year. But I'm now regularly doing this as long as I get permission to use the resume. And I explained to my families why. I'm like, look, it was right. And it was helpful. And, it's just information. And so I don't know if you want to stop there, or you want me to just also briefly mention Jeffrey Neal's prompt list builder that you can also use for starting list building. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so that I can take no credit for this prompt at all, but Jeffrey Neal is also a school counselor, a college counselor at an international school, the graded school in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I personally consider him the sort of leader of all AI in college counseling. I mean, he's amazing, and I know he's been on your Friday forums, and he's just fantastic. So anyhow, he has a lot of AI tools. He has I think Carmen has it or is going to have it in the chat. He has a newsletter that is fantastic on using AI generally, but also specifically for college counseling. He does a lot to help college counselors in school or school counselors with letters of recommendation, but he also has this tool to help students themselves do college research and build their list. And so this is his prompt. And I think one of the important things to think about, and I may have also shown this at an IECA professional member meeting. But the important thing with doing this, and I've played around with it, it's just I for a variety of reasons, I'm not using ChatGPT for my initial list building. It's here where he says you're going to ask me the questions one at a time. This is really, really important. And it's the kind of thing that I do when I'm saying to it, you're going to read a resume and then you're going to let me know when you're done. Do you understand? And that's one of the key things about the prompting of the model, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity. You have to be very, very specific about who you are, specific about the role you want the AI model to, or the robot, I call it, to adapt, and what you want it to do, because then it can iterate with you and it can talk with you and go through the process. If you just sort of give it a vague question like you might with a Google search, you're probably not going to get the information that you want. So I know that this is going to be available for people. He also has shown how this works, but I would say do this, play with it, see if you like it. I would recommend doing it for a school or a kid, excuse me, where you've already started a list and you have your own judgment there so you can test how it works against what you've done. I didn't mention in the video, when I did that, the assessment, I did ask other people to look at the resumes and give me their assessments and test it against that. So whenever you're using these models, I definitely recommend testing your own judgment against it and maybe having a colleague's judgment to see how accurate it is. And when I've seen Jeffrey do this, it's not perfect, and it's probably less good about financial aid and merit aid than it is about other match factors, but it was a good starting point. So like any tool, it's just a starting point. So that's another list building tool to play around with.
And this is available, I'll make it available in the show notes. It looks like we've already found some prompts. I mean, some links to this, but we'll include them in the show notes as well.
And I have somebody asked, I know I'm not supposed to look at the chat, but she asked to scroll up. So the initial prompt is you're telling ChatGPT, or you could do this with Claude, but I would do it with ChatGPT. I'm more familiar with that. You are an expert high school counselor with 20 years of experience. I am a high school student who is looking to develop an initial list. And then you're going to tell ChatGPT to ask you questions one at a time. And it tells you the different kinds of questions. And if you see Jeffrey doing this in a video, the first thing is ChatGPT, you'll say, you're going to ask me the questions, and then it's going to give the rest of this prompt. And then ChatGPT will say, okay, what are your regional preferences? And the kid will type it in. And then ChatGPT will say, well, tell me what the issues are with affordability. And they might say, I don't care, or I can only spend $50,000, or my parents really want merit aid, whatever it is. And it goes through these questions one at a time. And this is also important. If I do not have thorough answers to your questions, ask me follow-up questions, which it will do. And it's pretty freaky to see it do it, because I have played around with this. I didn't find, I couldn't make it work properly. Probably just need to practice more, but it's really interesting what it could do. And he makes it work. So I know it's doable. It was just a little overwhelming for me. Maybe if I went back to it now, I would find it easier, but I definitely would recommend playing around with this. I think first you have a real kid that you've worked with, you have the list that you've already developed for them, and then you put this in and see if it works for you.
Mm-hmm. Kate, can you expand this? Because we're seeing a lot of your desktop. Hopefully that's much better.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. This is the not tech savvy part of me. But it's also going to be in the on your website, so it'll be easy to see. And this is publicly available. He's provided this in different webinars and stuff.
Yeah. And Jeff is also an instructor in the UCLA program. So he teaches the practicum course, and he teaches the international students, and he has an AI corner in his class. So, which is pretty exciting. I've been able to take his class, and it's amazing, all the different things. And so this is a good point to talk about an approach to
Can I stop sharing? Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can stop sharing. I know what his approach is, and we started the webinar this morning a little bit with your approach, but now that you've been working with it and really delved into it, what do you see the role of AI for you and your students?
So I think it's a added tool. I think it's like using any kind of search engine, whether it's on College Board, whether I use this thing called List Hero, which I find very helpful. They are places to help you orient your thinking. They do not replace your judgment. Yesterday or Wednesday, I had the luxury of getting to listen to Stephen Antonoff again talk about list building, and that you start with who the kid is, right? it's not their GPA. It's not that they want a big school. And what does that even mean? You start with who that human being is. And I think that's just important for all of us to always, remind ourselves this is a kid and a person, a young person. And it's not an easy time to be a young person right now. So that's where you start. And then you have these other tools that can help you. I think what Jeffrey Neal says is right. You help you be efficient with your time so you can spend more time doing the human part of it and helping a kid understand where there are the differences on the margins and where they are going to be happier, and dispel the myths of what does it mean to go to a small college or a big college, and they're borrowing from Dr. Antonoff. And I think that's where the AI tools are so helpful. I do think that they are going to be increasingly used in college admissions, not just for transcript review, which they're all kind of admitting that they're going to be using it for a transcript review. It was sort of a new article, that article that came out about UNC looking at assessing the quality of the writing was, I don't think they wanted that out there, but now it's out there. I think the colleges need to be transparent about what they're using AI for, which is why I'm happy that there is now the AI special interest group at NACAC. Hopefully they'll have the gravitas to get colleges to talk about that. But I do think it's going to be used not just to look at the quality of writing, but, and this is more on the essay writing stuff that I've done some research on, they are training models to look for characteristics that they want in their students from essays. So I think that since colleges are going to be using these tools, we need to know what they are and understand them and bring them in as part of our ability to work with kids and assess them, not to do our job, but to help us do our job.
I agree. I don't think it's something we should be afraid of. We do want to be, aware, and I don't want to use the word cautious, but, circumspect in how we do it. But anything that we can use to help give us more time, excuse me, to do what we love to do, which is work with students. And that is the goal. In your comments, when we just finished the PDI this week, and Steve mentioned how when the FISC guide came out, everybody said, "Oh, well, they're not going to need college counselors anymore. We're going to be obsolete. They have the FISC guide," and that was not the case at all. And there's a lot of trepidation and things like, well, what's our job going to be? Our job is going to be even more important, because we're going to be the ones that are going to help cut through the noise, like with the internet, same kind of thing. Oh, everybody can find out everything they need. They don't need us to tell them. They need us more than ever, because we're dialing down the hose of information and giving them opportunity to go through and see what's relevant and what's not for their particular child in their situation, just as you said. So I think it can be an enhancement. Can it be abused? Absolutely. Is it scary? Absolutely. But that's why we as a profession, like the group that you mentioned, if you're a member of NACAC, to join that group, Emily Pacheco, Juliana Strive, who's an IEC, many other people are involved in that. They've had many, many webinars on that, and seeing it from the admission side and how they're building this. I mean, they've had Slate for how long? I'll tell you, one of the most popular videos that I have on my YouTube channel is the one of Christine Bowman demonstrating Slate. It by far has more views than anything else I've done. So using technology is a tool, and if we embrace it, then it'll make our jobs easier. It'll make us more relevant. Go ahead.
Sorry. The kids are using it, right? So that's the other thing. And so it's a little bit like, I said this at PDI too, that it's a little bit like sex education. If you just tell a kid, don't do anything, you don't know what they're going to do. If you give them good information about how they can use an AI tool ethically, appropriately, that I would rather do that than say, like, don't look, don't tell, do whatever, and pretend it doesn't exist, because it's out there. And I want the kids to know that I use AI
Mhm.
in my life, and that if they are going to use it inappropriately and write an essay, I'm going to know, and I'm going to deal with it, and not
Right.
because I'm using, and I do have copy leaks, that I do use AI detectors when I need to, or as a tool, because they also are imperfect. But I want the kids to not think that I don't know what's going on.
Exactly, exactly. And if you're not using technology and you're afraid of it, then that's going to impact the number of the families that will feel comfortable working with you. So let's have, it looks like we have a number of questions in the chat, and I know I can see there's a question. It's slightly on a slightly different topic. I looked at the question, but go ahead, Carmen. We've got a few minutes here. Let's address
Sure. So
questions.
there are quite a bit of questions.
I knew it.
So I guess we'll start with when you were doing the demonstration, why is it important like to ask one question at a time? Won't ChatGPT give you the same like list all at once if you give them the info all at once?
So I this is, I think, if this is with respect to Jeffrey's list builder, you want to do it one question at a time, because you want the interaction between the student and the just as if, they were talking to you. You wouldn't say, tell me all your questions, and I'm going to answer all your questions. You want to have a conversation, which ChatGPT will do. So I think in that case, that's why he's telling it to go one question at a time, ask me follow-up questions. The reason why I do it, like with the resume, where I'm asking it a question and I'm saying, do this, do you understand? It's because it can go off on a tangent. And so if I didn't say that and I just put in a resume, especially when I'm doing this on temporary, so it doesn't have a memory of how I like things done, it could just decide to make the resume better or worse or irrelevant. So you have to think of this as the same way if you were interviewing a person. You wouldn't just, ask them everything all at once, have them tell you everything all at once, and then go back to it, because your mind probably doesn't work that way, or most minds probably don't work that way. You want to think of the model like that as well.
I think that's great.
So, Kate, do you discuss these tools with your families and your skills with them as a benefit to the services you provide?
No, I don't. I haven't thought about doing that, but I suppose I could, but no, I haven't yet. Maybe I should.
Do you share with your students or parents some evidence of AI information to verify your professional judgment? If so, how much?
So I tell them the story about what happened. I've been telling all of my, the kids this year who are getting or waiting for decisions, tell them what happened as sort of cautionary tale, instructive. And I explain, though, that I'm not going to hand you over what ChatGPT says, because it's just going to help me be, informed. I will, where appropriate, show them, like, for example, there was a lot of things in the resume that were very, very instructive and helpful for improving. And so there, I'm happy to show that to a student. But I'm not going to give them just, the whole analysis of why you're a better fit for Yale versus Princeton. I would summarize that. And so I don't think that would be very helpful. And it's also not, it's a little too, it doesn't allow for that much nuance in a way, because I would want to modify it. And I probably would explain, this is what the model says. This is why I think this is accurate based on my visits and, my experience working at one of those schools, the students I know who've gone there, my students who've gone there, but I wouldn't just lock, stock, and barrel give them what ChatGPT said and say, this is the Holy Grail.
And to build on that, I'm curious about your preferences for ChatGPT versus Perplexity. So you mentioned both. Do you prefer one versus the other?
So they do different things. So Perplexity is great for creating like a curriculum. I'm actually teaching a new class now at UC Irvine. and on resources. And so I've been using Perplexity to help me think about how to organize the resources. So it's great for that. But I don't find it as conversational. For writing my own social media or responding to a letter to a parent, Claude is sometimes better. It's a little bit, it just writes a little bit more academically. I think the quality of writing is a little higher for normal research. And I wasn't able to show you, but anyone who wants to, I can show them another time, this really cool thing that it does to create a treasure hunt. ChatGPT is just really good at that. So I think that ChatGPT is my default for sort of most of the work I do. But if I want really high quality writing, I would use Claude. And if I want to put together more like a syllabus or whole extract, articles, which is what I do if you're working on a syllabus for school. Perplexity is really good, and Perplexity gives you all of its citations where they found everything. Now, ChatGPT is beginning to do that more, but Perplexity used to be better at that. So they just have different roles. It's the same way that you might use, one tool for, I don't know, one cookbook if you're making dessert versus another cookbook if you're making stew. They just have different strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And can you give us some context as to what your student resumes look like? Ellen says, I rarely have a student who needs anything beyond the Common App activities or awards. And then in addition to that, how do you attach that file to ChatGPT, and at what point in your conversation?
Okay, so I attach the file by you just download it and upload it, and it can read the PDF. So that's super easy to do. I'm not sure I understood the first part of the question. These were two highly accomplished kids. They, as I say, their academic profile was effectively the same. I mean, there was no difference. They were different in their extracurricular pursuits, but they were equally accomplished in both of them. So I don't know if that answers the question, because I'm not really sure I understood the first half of it, but hopefully that answers the question.
Well, I think it is to do with like where in the process, do you upload the file in the beginning and then start with all the questions and then,
okay.
Or start the questions and then say, here's what I want you to do and here's what it is I want you to do it with.
I have not used the resume. I have not used ChatGPT for writing the resume. I'm toying with potentially doing that. I'm a little bit nervous to do that because there are a couple colleges out there, including Princeton and Rochester, that are pretty explicit that you can't use AI for any part of the application process. So I don't want anything that they're going to be sending to colleges to be AI generated. So I am not using it to write the resume. You certainly could. And I know my son is grown up. That was the first time I realized you could, because he showed me his resume. I was like, wow, that's really good. And he said ChatGPT, and I was like, wow, that's really good. So it can definitely do that, but that's not where I've used it. This is at the end, sort of when you're making that last, decision. Where are you going to apply, early if you're having a hard time deciding, or if you want to make a final tweak, because you could, in theory, tweak your activities descriptions for your early decision or early action colleges. And then if you wanted to make it more generic, you could, but you could just go back and change it after the next set of submissions. But that's where I've used it at the very end, the tool that I showed at the beginning.
And in ChatGPT, I haven't used other AI tools extensively. I have used Jasper, but just to give you guys just a perspective of difference, like I pay $100 a month for Jasper, and it's about marketing and social media, and it's a phenomenal tool. It's very versatile. But now I pay $20 a month for ChatGPT, and I'm going to drop Jasper because ChatGPT is much more, it's beyond the marketing. It gives me all these other different things. And in ChatGPT, you can create your own bots. So you can train it and create bots to do resumes, to do different things. I've created a couple, and they're still evolving, but they can save so much time. So I know we tons of questions, more than we have, lots of the details. So I'm going to bring Kate back. We're probably going to come back in May. We're going to make May kind of our essay month, and we'll look at some kind of the status of AI and essays. And then a lot of this information is going to be on the show notes, the links. I do want you to mention, Kate, a little bit more detail about the college search, because one of the things we talked about that we had on the title for today was university visits and the Wesleyan college search. So
Right,
you mentioned
right.
in passing. So
Sure.
tell them a little bit more about that, and we'll put
So,
that in the show notes too.
so basically, I'll try and bring this up. I don't know if I can make this big, but it's so boring. I think I can do this here, sharing the main screen. It's, the
Mhm.
kids go on the tours, they don't pay attention, they're zoned out. So
We're
now,
not seeing anything yet.
no, I'm going to do it right now.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
So, for all of my kids, when they're going on the tours, and hopefully you can see this, and this isn't all, I take the kid and what they're interested in. So, like, they're interested in in this one, the kid was interested in theater, and I think, I can't remember, and film or something. I don't remember exactly what they were. But anyhow, I tell ChatGPT that I have a kid is interested in theater and interested in like whatever it was that they were interested in, and to please make a map. And so they make a treasure hunt map like this, and then they do oh, I need to close this, a PDF of clues. And it says, welcome to this treasure hunt map. So you have to give them both. And okay, so this kid was interested in American studies, theater, and Greek life. Okay. And it tells you where to go and what to do. So I can change this before I turn it into a PDF, but it takes, get a flyer about upcoming events, take a picture of the stage, go to all of these different places, and then the map shows them how, the route. And it just makes them so much more engaged with their visits. And it takes like 4 seconds to do this. It takes longer to attach it as an email or put it into the kids' Google folder than it does to have ChatGPT make this model. And because there's nothing proprietary about this, there's no confidentiality, there's nothing about the kid, this is an example of where I made the bot. Because so it literally, I just put in school and the 4 characteristics, and it does it like that. It's amazing. And I'll stop sharing now, because that will also be in your show notes. It will be it's so great. They are so much more engaged with their visits, and the parents are like super psyched, and they make them do it. So I have found that to be so much better than just filling out my worksheets.
Oh, totally, totally. And I love the fact that it takes so little time. You give it the parameters and boom, there it is. And you can still, the wonderful thing about chat or any of the AI is then, well, yeah, that's almost there, but no, I want you to do this. Okay. And you're not starting all over every time you give it a command. And that
Right.
builds up. And I actually have found that I prefer that. Instead of giving a really, really long prompt at the beginning, give a really short prompt. And then, as you said, you can see where they're going. And then I can shift it. It's like, well, no, do this, or here, go that. And you still have to be aware, because I had it do a college list recently and creating charts. ChatGPT does a wonderful job of creating charts. And then it can create a list that you can download. A Word document, Excel, it doesn't do so well. But it'll can create PDFs or Word documents, and then you've got half the work done. And you can say, give me the resource. So then you can give the link so you know where it's coming. So you're not having to search and double check. So
Yeah.
all of those things are very fun and very, it's just very opportunities to really explore and, and use it and save yourself so much time. So it's just really great. So Okay, so Lou's got a comment about he was at
My
Wesley.
daughter went to Wesleyan too. Yeah, the map's not perfect, but it's just giving them the route of where to start and how to walk. And you know what, that it's just, it still engages them. That was my daughter, by the way, for her interest, American studies, theater, and she wasn't bizarrely in Greek life. I didn't understand that, but that's how I got inspired. Because I don't like to, I want, before I like set it out into the whole wide world, I wanted it to just be um, not anybody where I was worried about what, a kid. So my daughter graduated years ago.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Our kids end up being our guinea pigs, right?
Right.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. And thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. We've had 80 people here today. So you can tell this is a very popular topic. I will be addressing it over, the next year, this year. And I have links I'll put in the show notes to Jeffrey's session and other sessions. I've done a session with Bob Carlton. So we've done it from the college counseling side, plus the business side. There's a lot of things you can do with AI from a business perspective. And also, I just want to remind people, I am doing a 3-hour workshop this next week on college list building. And it includes information back to what you said in the beginning is how do you know the student? You can't build a list without knowing the student. So I'm in the process of developing a resource. It's not going to be a tool, but a resource that you can use from a survey perspective to understand a student. So I share that in the workshop, but we use AI. So I do have a few spots. The 29th, it's next week. Or I'll be doing it again in March. And just a couple other announcements. I've done interviews with Dr. Corey C. Miller, Gen Z. She does the research on Gen Z. She's got a new book coming out. She just sent me an email yesterday. She has a free webinar on this. It's Gen Z across the world. So if you want to learn more about the more recent research from across, countries all across the globe, there's a free webinar next week. So the link will be in the show note or in the chat in the show notes. So you can do that next week. And then the last announcement, two more announcements I have is we're working with students, essays. Ethan Sawyer does a course for counselors for us as advisors on essays. So he's starting one March 11th. So I have a very special link. If you use the link in the chat, it will let him know you came from my audience. And you guys all know I have the best. You all are all the best audience. I always feel like Taylor Swift when I say that, but I understand what she means because I feel the same way. Anyway, so he's revamped his college essay approach. I'm very excited and interested to see exactly what he's done. So I'm going to try and bring him onto my show at some point. But he has a new course that you can check out that starts in March. He's got a webinar next week too on that. So lots of webinars going on this month. And the last announcement is I won't be here in February. I'll be back. We'll be back in March. We're going to do how to read a financial aid appeal or financial aid letter and talk about appeals. We have some colleges and Crystal is going to come. Crystal Tate is going to come and lead that. So if you want to follow, I'm going to be in Scotland and Portugal in February. So if you want to follow me, I'm going to create a new hashtag instead of Cindy in Cornwall. It's going to be Cindy in Europe. So hopefully we don't have storms like what's going on there right now because I don't want to get washed away. And I know I've been watching these videos the last couple of days. It's just the storms that are going on in our world is just incredible. So I hope you stay safe. I hope everybody stays well. I hope you stay warm. And thank you for being here, Kate. Thank you. Thanks, Carmen. And we'll be back. I think it's March 14th is when our next, somewhere in there is our next webinar. So everybody have a great weekend. And thanks again for being here.
Bye, Cindy. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Kate. Thank you.